Cheers, Matt. Yeah, I'm James, one of the co-founders of Backpedal, and what we're building is a platform of services for e-bike owners. And we're starting with a technology-driven solution to e-bike theft, which basically does prevention, recovery, and insurance. Now, since applying for Pitch Tank, we've actually ended up having an oversubscription on a 250k angel round, so we should be closing that in the next few weeks. But I'm always looking for future partners for our business. Like I can see us having a really good 6-9 months growth, and I think we might be back out in the market again in the future. So, yeah, if people do want to have a chat and they think it's a fit, yeah, just make sure to get in touch. So I've got about 30 years on e-bikes and bikes. Like my first jobs growing up were always in bike shops. I've worked as a mobile bike mechanic for part-time gigs, and I've had bikes in using e-bike. I've had jobs using e-bikes as well. So this is an area that I really know and love. But my professional career actually started with investment banking. I was doing private equity buyouts and acquisitions. I left that at 23 though to start my first business, and that was a platform marketplace business in funerals and death tech. That ended up getting taken over by a FTSE 250 PLC in the end. So this is, and then I left that and then started working on Backpedal over the pandemic. Two co-founders, Richard and Matt, who I've both known for a long time. Richard heads up everything to do with partnerships and sales, and Matt is our lead engineer, CTO. So our vision is basically that there's going to be this massive business created in e-bike services, and we take a lot of inspiration from this by looking at what happened in the car market. So when cars were introduced, there was this springing up of related service companies. So take the AA, for example, been going for over 100 years now, recently valued at $4 billion. They provide through their club membership, kind of overarching service platform, a whole host of different services to customers. We think the same thing is going to happen in the e-bike world, and that's what we've come to build. But I also know from my prior business that trying to build a platform and marketplace business is incredibly tough, and having the right foundation is absolutely essential. I'll go into the reasons why we've started with theft recovery on the next slide, but like all good stories, there's an element of luck here as well. So during the pandemic, my girlfriend's bike got stolen. She's a teacher. She used that bike to get to work every single day. And that theft was a massive impact for us. So she then had to either get the train every day, take longer to get to work, spend about an extra £20 every day, or she had to beg, borrow, and steal lifts off people. And it just blew my mind that theft hadn't been solved yet as an issue. And given the acceleration and demand of things like e-bikes, it's incredibly important to solve this. And that's because, 250,000 bikes get stolen every year in the UK alone. So it's a big issue from that basis. But now these e-bikes are being used for functional jobs. People need them available. They're taking kids to school, they're commuting, businesses are using them for deliveries. Theft really throws a spanner into the works for these companies. And alongside that, the asset value. These e-bikes are now routinely £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, £6,000. That is a serious economic impact to that person when that bike gets stolen. So looking at theft, we chose it because it is this fantastic foundation for the long term. And I kind of think about it on 3 levels. I think about it on a problem level, think about it on a business model level, and I think about it on a growth level. And on the problem level, it kind of almost doesn't really need explaining to people. Everyone gets that theft is this massive issue with massive impact. But it was when I started thinking about the business model that I got really excited. Essentially, we're a subscription model, so people pay us $8.99 per month, and these are long-term subscribers. We get barely any churn, and this is because people know when they sign up that they're hoping not to have to use us. So literally, the agreement with customers is they're going to give us money, and if something happens, we'll help them out. But for 99% of customers, that doesn't happen. So from a startup perspective, you're literally sitting there collecting money off a base of customers every month. And then what really sealed it for me was thinking about the growth loop. And this comes back to, again, the problem. Everyone gets that theft is a problem, but nobody thinks it can be solved. So what we've started to do and what we plan to do is basically use recovery content, social media recovery content to drive users. And that's because the more customers that we get, we're going to have more thefts. The more thefts that we have, the more content we can produce, proving that we can solve.
Oh, that's dirty.
And the more content that we can produce, the more people that we can persuade to trust us and come on board and bring more users. And the whole point of this is to then build this strong foundation that we can then cross-sell the further services to and build out that platform. And the reason why we're really excited and think that this is such a great fit at the moment is this e-bike market is exploding. So I've always been a bike user, and I think maybe we will do bikes eventually, but really for now, the focus is this e-bike market. Customers like Ilan there. Ilan's one of our
1 minute
customers.
warning.
Ilan's one of our customers. She takes her kids to school on her e-bike. She goes to her allotment to do her gardening there. It's customers like Ilan who are like really driving this growth. Putting some numbers on it, 30 million e-bikes in Europe right now. To put that in context, there's 150 million cars. So this is catching up quick. The market has been growing super, super fast. And given the long-term macro tailwinds, we think it's going to continue. You've got obviously economic through cost of living, you've got environmental through climate change, and obviously people are trying to live healthier and healthier lives. Getting out of cars and onto e-bikes is kind of a no-brainer for a lot of our issues. Yeah, cheers. Thanks. Happy to dig into any of it in any more detail.
Let's dig into it. Are you AA for bikes or AAA? AA is Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
So this is the Americanisms and Britishisms. The AA is the UK Automobile Association.
Yeah, you might need to go with AAA there.
Yeah.
They're very interesting, very interesting. So your basically goal is to become the insurance company for e-bikes.
So that's the near-term goal, and we've actually just closed an insurance partnership deal. So at the moment, the customers who've been signing up have all been really early adopters who are willing to double pay. So they pay for recovery through us, and they typically hold a separate insurance policy. Now that doesn't really make sense for most people because people don't want to do that double paying. But we've actually just closed off an insurance partnership that we should be launching at the end of this month. So pretty soon we'll be offering to customers basically one combined product whereby you pay us. If your bike gets stolen, we'll go out to get it back. If we can't get it back, we'll give you a payout. So it's almost like a kind of insurance plus deal for the customer. But that is actually that's just the start. I think once we've nailed that insurance product, the idea is then to start to build out those additional services. So whether it's like tangential fintech things like finance for e-bikes, claims management on the legal side, there's like a whole host of services that we want to then start adding in. But yeah, insurance is the first bit.
I mean, why don't insurance companies just do this?
It's a good question. A lot of them really aren't set up for it. So if you're an insurance company, you're not really set up to go out and get e-bikes back, and it's not something that a lot of them have got the operational setup to be able to do. It's not a particularly easy or quick task. So to compound this, most e-bikes at the moment don't come with GPS trackers. So we're kind of solving two problems at the moment. We're solving getting trackers onto bikes, and we're also then solving getting those back through recovery. Those aren't things that we've seen another insurance provider be able to do yet. However, we have had inbounds from multiple insurance companies who want us to go and recover their bikes. Like they literally just want to pay us money.
Yeah, that might be an easier service, or just to white label what you guys are doing.
Do you know what? We've explored it, and we've got a couple of insurers who have talked about it, but they've not quite pulled the trigger yet. And it could be a good near-term revenue generator. But for me, if we can nail the subscription model and just start to get subscription customers coming through, that's where like the sustainability is in this business. It's that reliable monthly income from the subscriptions.
Well, you would have the reliable monthly income if you had the insurance companies as your clients. You would just have a lot more clients and a lot smaller percentage of the pie, but a much bigger pie. Yeah. Just food for thought.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So because insurance companies can do this, and there are lots of different trackers, anybody can kind of do this. So what's the defensibility? What's to prevent other people in different cities or countries from doing exactly the same?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And there's three ways that we think about this. The first is in the actual recovery operations. So we basically use a network of retired police officers, ex-military guys, ex-military guys, like other security professionals. Now, it's not particularly easy to figure out how to find and recruit these people. And what we've basically seen is that these guys also don't really need to work multiple things. Like the retired, it's people like my dad, like retired police officer, 30 years police. Like he just wants some occasional fun, well-paying work to do. And because we can pay people well, they want to come out and do the work. Now, that doesn't mean they won't necessarily join another platform, but it's not like they are relying on us for, or they really need a lot of income. So I think once we've got these guys, if we're remunerating them well, and if we're managing them well and they're enjoying working with us, I don't think there's a massive incentive for those guys to like work across like 4 or 5 different competing platforms. Now, the second one is police relationships, and the police are massively overstretched. But they do need to solve bike crime. They get absolutely slated for it, both by the press, both by local communities, because they're not very good at solving bike crime. But because they're overstretched, the police also don't want to manage multiple relationships. Once we're in that position where we know who to speak to within the police in each area, that is defensibility by my method. Longer term, there's a data play here as well. Now, this is 100% longer term, but say if we get into a position where we've got the UK nailed down, we're starting to do various cities in Europe, we will be building up a massive data set of like how bike theft happens. Now, of course, someone else can come in and start to offer the product, but if we're doing it better and cheaper than them, it makes it quite hard for that person.
What about the vigilante effect? So Batman gets on your platform and beats the crap out of someone. How do you deal with that? Because I imagine when someone steals a bike and you go back to steal the bike back, it doesn't necessarily always go so well.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something that is obviously a risk for this business. Now, we kind of do this in a couple of ways, and one is in the people that we use. So it is people who know how they should behave, and these people hold their own insurance. So say if you're like a retired police officer and you go out and do kind of like divorce proceeding work, or you're delivering like jury summons to people, like these people know what they should be doing. So one is you hire the right people who aren't going to go out and do that vigilante stuff. But then the second part is
are you hiring them or contractors?
It's on demand. It's on demand contracting. It's on demand contracting at the moment. I think longer term we will end up having a core team for ourselves, but for now it's on demand contracting with these guys. The second part is actually how we utilize the police. So we're already starting to build up kind of expertise in what jobs we do and what jobs we get the police to do. So say, for example, like we don't go into people's houses and we don't go and like confront people when it's like a risky situation and it looks like there's the potential for an incident. And what we actually end up doing is our guys go on the ground and they'll be like the eyes and ears on the ground, and then we feed all of that information through to the police and get the police to respond. Now, we've actually managed to get the police to respond 5 times out of the 6 that we've needed them. So it won't be 100%, but then again, we actually don't need to get back every bike. That's where the insurance comes in. So if there's situations where it's too risky to recover or it's not safe to recover, we've still got the fallback insurance.
Can you make any money for just potential like citizens arrest, or kind of getting the actual criminals?
So this happens already. Actually, there's like, and this gave us a lot of inspiration at the start. There's Facebook groups out there. One of them in Cambridge, in particular, that we've done some work with. They've got 12,000 members. It's called Stolen Bikes in Cambridge, and they're just members of the public, and they routinely get stolen bikes back by seeing when they come up on eBay and Gumtree and going round to thieves' houses that they know operate in the area. So there is this. I think there is the potential for some community-based stuff longer term, but realistically, we're not at a size where we can manage that risk. So for us, it's stick with the.
No, I don't even mean that. I mean, you're getting the police officers, you're figuring out who's stealing the bikes, and then you're going to the cops and saying, this guy stole the bikes. Can I get $150 tip off for
Oh, well, there's a very different culture in the US because I know in the US you can get like paid for tip-offs and paid for like reporting things. In the UK, if that happens in the UK, I'll be absolutely amazed. But I'll suggest it to a few police officers and see what they say.
So you mentioned UK. What's the expansion plans?
Yeah, well, we've already got customers in Amsterdam. So one of our business clients, when they launched in the UK, they also wanted us to protect their bikes in Amsterdam. So we've kind of got coverage across the UK and then Amsterdam as well. And to set that up, we just looked for local people who match the same profile of what we need in the UK. So initially, we want to close out the UK, and then we're going to roll out through Europe. Now, we have had conversations with a big guy in the US who runs like one of the big YouTube channels, and he's got a big e-bike store in New York. He would like to set up something similar in America. So really for expansion plans, it could be a toss-up between Western Europe and America as the next market. We'd have to just put more work in to assess which one's the right option.
I mean, an obvious acquirer is Ring and Amazon.
Yeah, or an insurance company is
or an insurance company.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about? I assume you don't share any data with insurance companies. For instance, people biking too quickly or maybe swerving left and right. And
that's a good question. No, we don't at the moment. And to be honest, because of how the GPS trackers work, there's actually usually only a limited amount you can do on that front because the trackers aren't sending like a signal every second. Because if they did that, they'd be using quite a lot of power. So usually how the trackers are set up is to send a signal maybe like every 30 seconds, every minute. So you might get a bit of that data that you're looking for, but the actual hardware isn't quite there yet for companies to be able to do that analysis.
But I was thinking more what you would do with that data, because if you know where I'm biking on my bike, I'm not so keen on you sharing where I'm biking on my bike.
Not quite sure I understand, but just as an extra little snippet, we've actually started building AI and machine learning models to actually predict when a bike is at risk. And we've started testing this with a couple of customers. So basically what we do is we kind of put all of the data into a black box and it will say, right, your bike is usually in these sort of areas and being used in this sort of way. As soon as we then get like a red flag that like indicates the bike is being used in a different way or has gone somewhere new, we ping it through to that customer on WhatsApp. So the customer just gets a WhatsApp being like, is your bike safe? If it is, fantastic. They can just click yes, comes back through to us. If it's no, obviously then we can respond even more quickly than that customer might have even known that the bike's been stolen. So there are really interesting data plays for this. It's just at the first point, we're just acquiring customers now. That's the main thing.
What's the biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge is getting trackers onto bikes effectively, or efficiently. We're not a hardware company. We don't make GPS trackers. Basically, as long as a GPS tracker performs to certain standards, we can use any third-party GPS tracker. And at the moment, the e-bike market most e-bikes don't come fitted with trackers. So we've either got to get bikes on trackers through partners like retailers, which is doable. It's feasible. I've done it before at my old business, but it's still fairly inefficient sales route on that front to like partner with retailers so that they can then sell the trackers so that we can have our service. What's really exciting though is more and more OEMs, more and more of these bike manufacturers are starting to build in trackers at the factory level. So we've got our first relationship coming this summer where a new bike brand, they're launching their e-bike and they're going to pre-fit a GPS tracker and they're going to like combine our service for the customer at checkout. So it starts to become easier and easier and easier for us to just acquire customers. Whereas at the moment, getting trackers on the bikes is relatively inefficient because you've kind of got a bit of a convoluted sales channel.
What about scooters and scooter brands? Because they have big fleets, and big fleets equal big money, and I'm sure those are getting stolen.
So two slightly different questions. I'll make 2 points. One, scooters, e-scooters as a whole, totally makes sense as well. It is a slightly different customer profile because usually with a scooter you can take it with you, so kind of the theft risk is innately a bit lowered. But we do have inbound questions from people about protecting scooters. Then on the shared fleets, so shared e-scooters and shared e-bikes. Totally, we are definitely a solution for those guys, but I think we're a solution for those guys when we're at a scale and operational efficiency that I can go to the CEO and CFO and say, how much are you guys spending on theft at the moment? Because these guys will already have teams, and the CFO will have a line in his budget to say either like replacement scooter cost from theft, or how many guys are we paying to go out and recover these and for themselves. So I think when we'll be able to bring those guys on is when we've got an established network, and I can go to the CFO and say, how much are you spending on this? We can cut that in half. That's when they become customers.
If you fail, why will it be?
You've asked me this before and I didn't have a good answer.
Better have a good one now.
I think it might be just lack of growth in the e-bike market. So say if the e-bike market doesn't take off as we think it's going to, say if it stays as a relatively niche transport mode. So say if only 2% of customers, 2% of people use e-bikes, or 5% of people use e-bikes, maybe that just means that we don't have enough scale density of recovery operations to make it work. Obviously, I'm super bullish on the e-bike market. I think this could become something that 10, 15, 20, 25% of people use routinely. But I would go lack of growth in e-bikes as potentially being the biggest failure point.
And what's the biggest weakness on your team?
We probably need someone with police style or recovery operations style experience. It's not something that we've ever done. None of us are policemen. My parents were policemen, so I know the world, but it's not like I've ever worked in the police. So I think that is probably currently the biggest weakness. However, what protects us a little bit there is the fact that really in these early stages, the majority of the work is on selling and acquiring customers. Innately in the model, you actually don't have to do very many recoveries because not all your customers' bikes get stolen. It's like a percentage of your customers' bikes get stolen. So what we're planning to do at this stage is actually try and find someone to do some advisory work. So try and find like a senior police officer who can advise us separately without being a full-time team member at this point. I don't think we've got the budget to have someone be a full-time recovery operations senior person at this stage.